I have no right to speak before you here because you're the experts, and Cynthia and I are just learning from you. And what we'd like to see really is a very robust fisheries sector. It is therefore my honor to be part of this momentous event and to launch the first comprehensive National Fisheries Industry Development Plan. I'm so happy that you thought about coming up with this fisheries development plan because I really think that the roadmap to food security, to climate change adaptation would be by empowering and giving support to the very vulnerable fisheries sector. I'm particularly interested in this 5-year National Fisheries Plan due to the challenges that the industry must address and cope with. I don't have to remind you, and we all know that the Philippines is one of the world's richest ecosystems. In fact, they say that the Visayan Sea, as you know, is the center of biodiversity, not in Asia, not in Pacific, but in the world. But why do we find the poorest sectors in the fisheries sector? Why are fisher folks considered one of the poorest populations in the country, considering we have the richest ecosystem, characterized by extensive coral reefs, seagrass beds, and dense mangroves. It is, as you know, located within the Coral Triangle. Hindi ba ho? It was in 2009, then President Arroyo met in, what province was that, in Indonesia, with 6 heads of state. And they declared and affixed their signature on a commitment to protect the Coral Triangle together with Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. But we look back, 7 years has come. What has come of that commitment to protect the Coral Triangle? While the Philippines is the richest and the center of biodiversity, the Coral Triangle, of which we are a part, is the richest again in the world. But why is it that the poorest populations are in the richest area in the world? And so we are so blessed that we also have the center of marine biodiversity, and that is within the Verde Island Passage. It is also my advocacy, especially for the local governments who are present here today, that the provinces within the Verde Island Passage, that this is declared a protected area so that sustainable fishing can also be done in that area. So we wonder, despite this abundance of marine resources, we know very well that a large percentage of our population living in coastal communities remain poor. An estimated 4 out of 10 coastal residents in the Philippines live below the poverty line. We ask ourselves, why do unsustainable fishing practices still happen? Why does urbanization and pollution degrade our marine ecosystems? Why does a changing climate pose a great threat to our seas? Let me quote the 5th assessment report of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it found that in the last 3 decades, it has been successively warmer. The Earth's surface has been exceedingly warm, and you know that. And therefore, this is unprecedented in the last few decades. Ocean acidification, that would affect the fisheries sector, having absorbed about 1/3 of the carbon dioxide emitted. And this has resulted in coral bleaching. Attorney Asis knows about this. For an archipelagic nation like the Philippines, this unraveling scenario is a nightmare due to the threats of inundation, of the decrease in fish catch, and of course, even weak tourism in the marine environment. Rising sea surface temperatures, ocean acidification, these are projected to cause major damage to our coral reef systems. I don't have to teach you, and you know better, that the coral reefs are the food basket or the homes of our various fish species. A square kilometer of healthy coral reef may yield to about 30 tons of seafood every year. But sea level rise, floods that damage fish farms, increased acidification of our oceans by 2050 could reduce farmed fish yield by 90%. So the destruction of all these coral reefs, whether due to coral bleaching, or to destructive fishing practices would translate to lower fish catch and to lower protein for our people. And it is estimated that 80% of the animal protein requirement of Filipinos come from our seas. So I only set that premise because I am stressing the importance of the comprehensive National Fisheries Industry Development Plan for 2016 to 2020. And I perhaps would encourage Congress to in fact enact this into law, because it should not be just till 2020, because as we see the projections for a decreasing yield from our oceans is till 2050 and beyond. And I hope that together with the DA, together with BIFAR and our chairman of the Agriculture Committee and our counterparts in the House who are present here today, we could institutionalize the protection of the fisheries sector by looking into the comprehensive fisheries plan and enact this into actual legislation, so that if it is legislated, it is mandatory that the annual General Appropriations Act funds the fisheries sector. I also, masarap makikinig ng palakpak. So, if DA Secretary Alcala would give us a copy of this comprehensive plan, perhaps the office of Senator Cynthia and myself, before adjournment in June, could file this. We are not certain it will become a law, but what we could do is we could file it and refile it in the next Congress so that this comprehensive plan can be backed up by actual, not just legislation, but by actual funding. And so that you don't have to ask for funds all the time, lalapit sa senador, sa congressman, etc. Dahil pagpatas na yan, at saka it goes beyond their terms. After 2020, I won't be here anymore. You'll probably see me around vacationing in your provinces, but I will not be in the Senate anymore. We don't know. But if it's a law, it will go beyond Senator Cynthia and my term. And so I hope our congressmen present here can commit that we do this together. I also would like to commend, actually, the DNR for their SCREMP program, the Sustainable Coral Reef Ecosystem Management Program. And I hope that both the BIFAR and the DNR SCREMP could actually work on this. We know that the DOST has actually also done some work through their program with the PICARD, the Philippine Innovation on Coral Restoration, where they've established laboratories. What I'm saying is that agencies of government, whether DA, DNR, DOST, and many others, even local governments, have actually shown the importance of taking care of the fisheries sector. And I just hope that there would be convergence in the way that they should actually not duplicate efforts, but work on areas that are underserved or unserved. Also, I'd like you to know that way back in 2012, I shepherded and sponsored the Senate concurrence on the ICLOR, or the ratification of the agreement on the International Center for Living Aquatic Resources Management to establish the Office of the World Fish Center in the Philippines. That was way back 4 years ago, because I hope that this World Fish Center in the Philippines, as we ratified it in the Senate, is important, and so that their projects on small-scale fisheries practice, on aquaculture, will also improve and help the fisheries sector. So, in closing, I just want to give my commitment to all of you, that for as long as I'm here, and I have my colleagues in the Senate who are like-minded and like-hearted, and in Congress as well, that we provide the necessary support to our fisheries sector, not just by speeches, but actual putting of allocation for funding. Why are we? We are an archipelago. We have 30 million hectares of land, and that's good. We protect our ecosystems, we protect our forests, we protect inland waters, etc. But we have 7 times more water and oceans. So we are an archipelago and a maritime nation, but we are not acting like one. It was Senator Shahani who first said that in another forum, and I'm quoting her. We are an archipelagic nation, we are a maritime nation with 30 million hectares of land and 7 times more of oceans and seas. and therefore 7 times more of the wealth of the seas. But why are we not acting like one? So we really have to have a Department of Oceans, whatever you want to call it, Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. It has to be carved out. Ayaw ko kung magagalit sa akin mga taga-DA, pero lalong mapapalakas na may agrikultura, tapos meron fisheries. Hindi ko alam kung magagalit sa akin bureaucracia, mungkahi lang naman po ito, pero doesn't it make common sense that if you have 30 million hectares of land and you have 7 times more of your seas, you should protect it equally or perhaps even more without taking away the resources for the other. It's a humble suggestion. This will be subject to consultations, but I leave it to you. So on that note, I leave it to you, the experts in the fisheries sector, to think about it. But what's important is that we support the fisheries sector. We support the community fish landing program because the small barangays, paghuli nila, wala, patay na kaagad, hindi na makaabot ng merkado, walang mga kalsada, walang mabentahan. But with the fish landing center, which I hope can proliferate all over the country, in every far-flung coastal town, coastal barangay, so people will be able to store, at least for a longer period of time, their fish catch and to be able to have sustenance for their limited and vulnerable livelihoods. On that note, I thank you very much for having me here and congratulate all of you for the work you are doing, because you are the real heroes of our country. You who work in the hinterlands, you who work in the farthest corners of the archipelago in the fisheries and in the agricultural sector. So congratulations once again. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.